It might be a bit of a bold statement to say this, but if it's done right, renewable energy is a perfect fit for agriculture. Give me a chance to explain myself with the minute I have here. My reasoning is renewable energy utilizes many of the same elements agriculture producers in Alberta and around the world use to grow food. Wind power is used for pollination in wheat and corn. Solar energy is the stuff of life for plants in combination with water power. And anybody farming in Alberta knows how important and precious water is for raising livestock. Even something like geothermal, which harnesses the Earth's heat for energy, uses, in a way, one of the most valuable resources in agriculture, soil. In this episode of Rural Routes to Climate Solutions, we're going to talk about community renewable energy and how it can benefit agriculture producers in Alberta. I'm Derek Leahy, holding my fist up high and saying, power to the producer. Today, I'm having a chat with Binnu Jeyakumar.
Yep.
Close enough?
Pretty good.
Thank you.
Better than when I first started.
Sorry for that. Maybe by episode 20 I'll get it right. Who's a program director at the Pembina Institute, which is a nonprofit think tank focused on energy and based here in Calgary. Binnu, are you originally from Calgary or Edmonton?
I am from Calgary, so you're never going to get me to cheer for the Oilers.
I should just ask you what your favorite hockey team was, I guess. And your career actually started out, you were working with coal power plants, as I understand?
Yeah, that's right. So way back in 2005, my very first project was actually working on coal-fired boilers in the plants just west of Edmonton. And yeah, things have come a really long way since then. I mean, renewables were still more expensive than coal and gas back then. So exciting times now.
Interesting. Can I actually just ask you how you made the transition to more clean energy or to what you're doing right now, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, in the company I was working with, we did have some clean energy assets too. So I ended up working in hydro plants for a while. I think similar to some of the values you were talking about with the farmers, I wanted to work on things that were more friendly for the environment and sustainable for humanity. Whoa, those are big words. But, so that was my interest. And then I wanted to start working on not just the technical side, but the policy solutions that can actually support technical advances. And that's how I started working at Pembina.
That's great, because all that policy stuff goes way over my head. So I'm happy somebody's working on it, and I'm happy it's you. Okay, so there was a rather big announcement, I think it was last week, from the provincial government that there's going to be about $20 million available for communities across Alberta to develop their own community energy projects. They're referring to it as the Community Generation Program. So my question to you is, I'm a farmer, or at least a quasi-farmer. I produce food, not electricity. Why should I care about this?
Yeah, it's a really valid question. So yes, that's fantastic. Actually, you produce food, and I'm really thankful for that. But you do use electricity for that. You mentioned how water is really important, so you need electricity for the irrigation pumps, for example. And that reminds me, actually, there's a really good project that farmers in Starland County have started. There's several of those. Solar projects that these farmers started. And what drove that was actually they needed to get electricity to remote irrigation pumps. And so they decided to install solar, which reduced their cost, actually. And they're finding payback periods of 8 years for that. So,
only 8 years, really? Okay, I always thought it was the most renewable energy. You're talking like 15, 20 years. 8 years is amazing, actually.
They were really surprised, too. They entered into 25-year contracts, and they thought they would make money back in 10 years. But but this is also because they worked together, and they figured out how to minimize their costs. And that's part of what community generation energy does, is it brings farmers together. You can reduce the amount of time you spend on it. You can maximize on resources everybody else contributes. And there are many creative solutions around that. And I'd actually say of almost everyone you talk to in Alberta, farmers have the longest history of working collaboratively, whether it's through co-ops or outside of co-ops. They understand how to take care of natural assets. They know how to build big machinery and take care of it. So there are some really innate strengths that farmers have that you can used to create these community energy projects.
Definitely. Which reminds me, because just before we started recording, we were talking about how there's a little typo when I sent you my questions, how it's not actually community-owned energy we're talking about, it's community energy. I actually don't know what the difference is, so if you would enlighten me, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. It's really broad definition, actually. So the way you define community energy is basically any small-scale energy project that provides environmental, economic, or social benefits to the community. So you're looking at projects that are somewhere between putting a solar panel on your rooftop to having a large wind farm on your land. So it's between that. So it's a wide range of sizes that you can have, and the way you participate in it. So there's a good question, like, do you actually have to own that community generation facility?
Exactly, yeah.
You don't. So that's one model. So you can end up owning part of, say it's a solar panel array, you can own maybe a few panels on it. So you have some equity stake. Or you could just enter into a long-term contract with a third party saying, okay, you're going to install these solar panels and I will purchase electricity from you at a fixed rate, and hence protect myself from any vagaries in the market for 10 years or 15 years. So you can do it like that. Farmers also have land, which is a huge asset. So you could lease your land and enter into an agreement through that. There is as many models as there are people who can think up creative ideas on how to get engaged in this.
Okay, so for like a shorter one-line answer, we could say like community energy is really an energy project that has some sort of benefit to that particular community where it is. Am I wrong?
Well said. Way better than I could have put it. Yeah.
There you go. The boy can learn. All right, let's move on to the announcement again that was made last week. Now, I'm not. You don't represent the government. It's very, very clear. I know you're part of a nonpartisan organization, but you understand this stuff a lot better than I do. So, in that particular announcement, the government said that this is meant for municipalities, ag society, indigenous groups to partner to create a small-scale energy project. Now, small. I don't know if you have the details on this, but like, how small is small?
Yeah. They haven't defined this. So what the government has committed to is spending $200 million to support community generation programs through a long-term contract with community generators. And the details of how small it can be is all going to be figured out in the program design. But we can take a guess. So what they have said is that it has to be connected to the distribution generation grid. So you can't be, like I said, like as big as a coal plant. Most distribution generation nodes, they max out at around 25 megawatts. So you can probably use that as an estimate for the upper side. And you can be as small as you want to be as long as you're connected to the grid.
Okay. Now, one thing that does drive me a little bonkers sometimes when I talk to renewable energy specialists is when you guys talking megawatts a lot. Like, I don't even 20 megawatts. How many solar panels is that? Or how many wind? I can't get my head around it. I'm sorry.
It's such a good question. I guess one good rule of thumb is 1 megawatt would take out about 2 to 2.5 acres of land.
That's massive. Oh my God.
But that's why, I mean, it's very rare that you would have a solar system that's going to be that big as part of a community energy project. It's very likely that they're, more, definitely smaller than 25 megawatts. And you might see some wind projects too, which might be more efficient with the use of land.
Okay, and then what about like some of those rooftop solar projects that you see? Like, are we not talking megawatts anymore? Are we down to kilowatts then? You really gotta help me out with this.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, and maybe that's a good place to actually start. So if you were to install a solar system on your roof or on the roof of your barn or something, the size is likely going to be somewhere between 2 to 10 kilowatts or something. Like a large commercial facility might get up to 20 kilowatts, but that's really large. So that's sort of what you would be looking at rooftop solar, the kind of project you might do on your own or just on a community rink. And then once you start getting into the megawatt sizes for solar, you start looking at acres.
And so just a quick follow-up to that one. Lots of producers, or there probably will be quite a few producers who'd like to be a part of the project, but they're not actually part of a co-op or some sort of formal organization. So to be part of this particular program, do I have to then go join, I don't know, an egg society or become a member of my county council or something like that? Can I still participate as an individual?
Yeah. My guess is, as a farmer, you probably wear 30 different hats already. So I can see why you don't want to join more societies. You don't have to be. And like I was saying, there are so many different models for how community generation can happen. So one thing that could happen, for example, is your Rural Electrification Association, so your REA, can apply to this program and decide to develop a community energy project. And then they can turn around and include you either as owning part of the panels like we talked about, or selling electricity to you at a fixed price. So they can then turn around, they can be that third party and bring you into the program in different ways.
Okay. And for your particular project to qualify for this program, like it can't just be in your community. There has to be some sort of, or at least what they said in the announcement was, there has to be some sort of community benefits. And once again, I know the details aren't exactly clear right now, but in your mind or from your understanding, what are they talking about when they're talking about community benefits?
Yeah. So what they've said is any benefits that could be classified as environmental, economic, or social. It really is dependent on the community to define it, which is actually good. So you have the power to set what is acceptable. At the end of the day, the way they will test it is through two things. One, if there's a third-party owner, like we were talking about, like with the REA or something like that, they would need to see a community benefit agreement. So that's an agreement between whoever's developed that project and the community. So you need to sign off on that community, right? That's where that control comes in. And you can then state what kind of benefits you see, whether it's for your local jobs, local businesses, for your own land, or your lease payments, whatever the co-benefits that you see. The other document could be a community benefit statement, and that's if you are owning it. So, say you've joined a co-op and then together you're owning this project, then you say, this is how we think it benefits the community.
Okay, now let's say it gets really competitive for this, so like more people actually apply for this program, then there's capacity in the grid. What, I don't know how to say this exactly, but how do you make it sexier on those community benefits? Like, what are the community benefits you think the government's really looking for on this? Is it just job creation, or is there something else?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Just some
you're
insider
well ahead.
info. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you got some tips out there for folks.
I don't know if I have actually great tips. I think, like I said, the more creative you are, probably you can make yourself stand out. It really depends on how they set up the criteria too, and how much weight they give to the type of community benefits that are. You know what I would actually think about is, how do you create excitement around this among your neighbors?
Okay.
So seeing what interests them, what would get these folks engaged, and using that to design what are the community benefits you're going to write the program on. So if you can show that there is a lot of support for it from local businesses, from local government, different stakeholders, showing that excitement goes a long way. And in fact, it's also a good way for you to get financing, right? Because you can then take that support and show that to banks or credit unions.
Definitely. And I was thinking too, I haven't been in Alberta that long, but I've been to a fair amount of small towns because of my job. And every town around here has either got a curling rink or a hockey rink, and they'll just be perfect for solar. So I'm just wondering, I don't know, some sort of campaign or project to electrify your curling rink with solar. Maybe that would make it a bit more tantalizing for the government. Just a thought.
Yeah, and actually a solar on a hockey rink could be small enough that it might even qualify under current grants that the government already has for municipalities.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But say you want to put it on a whole bunch of different rinks in a region or something like that and try and connect them up. There are some opportunities there. Yeah. I think, Derek, you're way more creative thinking than I am. Yeah.
Some people say I just have a very loose grip on reality. That's all.
That helps.
It is the time for imagination right now, I got to say. One thing, and I brought this up before when we were talking about the announcement, I had no idea what the heck they're talking about when they mention a contract of difference model, and you explained it very well last time. Could you explain it to us one more time? What the heck does contract of difference mean?
I'll try to. I
All
have
right,
to
you
move
said,
my hands a lot.
You said you needed like a chart. That's
Yeah. So, so the main idea behind a contract for difference program is that it provides certainty to the proponent on the revenue they can get from the electricity market. But at the same time, it doesn't put all the risk and onus on the government. So it allows for fair sharing of risk. So what this means, you did mention this is going to be a competitive process. So everyone in this program is going to bid in with a strike price. And the strike price sort of represents the revenue you need from the market to strike even with the cost of your project. And the government is going to try and select the lowest strike price among other criteria like the community benefits. And what happens then is if the electricity price at any given hour is above the strike price, for that period, you will be paying back to the government. And then when the electricity price is lower than the strike price, the government will pay you. So you are guaranteed that amount, but it also doesn't put undue risk burden on the government or you. It's a shared risk. And then you can actually take that commitment from the government to the bank and tell them that you've got this 20-year contract where you're guaranteed that revenue.
Okay, so it definitely gives you a certain degree of certainty in a situation like this. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what banks look for. So that's one of the challenges. There's a lot of people, I think, who are interested in community energy, but one of the reasons they can't get this off the ground is because the cost of financing is really high. And that's because of the uncertainties in our electricity market. Electricity prices can fluctuate a lot, even just during the day. And you don't know what the oil and gas market is going to do what the load is going to be. So that all creates a lot of uncertainty in the market, and which obviously banks don't like.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think how much the price for renewables, like solar and wind in particular, the price has just been crashing down the last 10 years. So I'm assuming it can only get cheaper from here.
Definitely, yeah. People say we haven't hit the bottom yet, for sure. There are folks who are even saying, if you take into account carbon pricing, by 2025, wind and solar might be cheaper than coal. New wind and solar will be cheaper than existing coal.
That's really hard to imagine. Yeah,
right?
I hope they're right. Yeah.
Imagine what that will do to the market. No. And imagine what a great opportunity it is for community generation.
Definitely. I like also kind of with this, because at first when I read contract of difference model, I'm like, what the heck are they trying to hide here? But now after having it explained to me, I could say I'm originally from Ontario, and okay, it didn't go so great with the feed-in tariff there. Good idea and all that, but obviously it just kind of locked in prices, and it seems like the idea here is that they're trying to avoid what had happened in Ontario.
Yeah. And it's also really competitive too, right? So that is also going to draw down the prices. So just if you look back in December 2017, so about a year ago, the government announced the results for a similar process, but for larger wind. And we got prices of about 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour, which has never been heard of in Canada. So that was because of how competitive the market is. So you can get some really good prices because of making that process competitive.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like you said, we haven't hit the bottom yet.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the prices today are very different than when Ontario introduced its feed-in tariff.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, let's put that program, that announcement inside. Let's just kind of talk about community and energy in general. I just realized we actually haven't clarified what kinds of renewable energy are we talking about here. Is it all types or certain types in particular?
Yeah, they've been pretty open. So the way they're writing this out, it sounds like it's renewable and alternative energy, and that makes the net pretty wide. So almost everything you mentioned there in your intro, actually, Derek, qualifies. So wind, solar, geothermal, hydro. There's opportunities with irrigation dams. All of those would qualify.
Okay.
Yeah. This really, I think the neat thing with this is it gives farmers a lot of options on how they can procure their electricity.
Okay, great. And as I said, just want to kind of dive into community energy itself, or community renewable energy, I should say. One thing with a lot of agriculture producers is they don't have a lot of time, and quite a few are cash strapped. And like a project like this, obviously you got to put some money into it, and it sounds like it would take up a bit more time. So why would I do this as a producer? Like, should I just let the electrical companies produce the electricity? I'll keep doing my thing. What are the benefits for me in all this?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, why do farmers look at solar panels in general too, right? Like the Starling County example I was talking about, I think comes down to two main things. One is you have more control over the electricity that you use, where it comes from, the impacts that it has, how it's designed. So there's a lot of that, like taking back control a bit as a community. And then the other is it also, like I was saying, it gives you more options, right? Now, when you're looking at just purchasing electricity from the grid, it's mostly gas and coal. So if you're someone who is thinking about 7 generations ahead, this is bringing more clean sources of energy into the grid, and it's a way that you can contribute. And I would say it's likely going to be easier than you figuring out by yourself how to install a solar system for a set of irrigation pumps, right? This is a way you can get, it's a bit more complex, I guess, if you get more people involved, but it's more sustainable in the long run, right? Like, so if you can get your REA interested in this and they do all the legwork, then you can just participate either, by leasing your land or purchasing the electricity.
Okay, well, that makes sense there. And actually, this leads into my next question is just, so it's a community project, but it's on my land. So am I responsible for the whole thing, even though it's me and my neighbors together? And even the other way around, what if it's on my neighbor's land, but I got money in that? Who takes the who's running the show here, pretty much, is what I'm trying to figure out.
And this is why it's hard to answer, because it depends on the model. Like I was saying, there's so many different ways to set it up. It doesn't have to be on your land. It doesn't have to be on any of your lands, too. It could be, wherever it might make sense with that asset. So, if it's an irrigation dam, maybe you're going out somewhere else to make use of it. At the end of the day, it depends on who is building that asset. So it's likely going to be a project developer, and then who ends up operating it. And that could be your rural electricity association. It could be your municipality. It could be a co-op. So whatever that organization that's tied to that project as a proponent, it's likely not you as an individual. So it's going to be one of those groupings, the co-op, your municipality, or your REA, and they would be responsible for this. It's not like you can just go and build this project anywhere you want, anyhow you want, right? They still need to go through a process. There's environmental assessments tied to it. There's requirements for reclamation and any remediation you might have to do at the end of the project, and any accountability that you have with the landowners. All of that still needs to be figured out. And then, so short answer to your question, it's whoever ends up operating that asset.
Okay, interesting. I don't know. Do you have any recommendations in a case like that? Do you think co-ops are better than REAs, or is it better to partner with municipal? And that's a really tough question, because I think it really depends on who you are, what your community needs are, and what the land's like too, where you are. I'm not too sure what the best way to design something like that would be. I don't know if you have any ideas hitting you right now.
I think, Derek, you're answering your own question too. It really depends on the situation.
I like to do that.
Yeah. Personally, I want to see as much diversity as possible. We've got some amazing counselors here in Alberta who've been creating already pretty interesting projects, and they're really gung-ho on taking an idea like this by the horns. So for those cases, I want the municipality to be able to own generating assets. And then there are also, actually, two of my friends who are raising cattle in Black Diamond, they started an electricity co-op, and they're now looking at seeing how they can purchase something, and so, that model works for them. So it really depends, And like you were saying too, how much time you want to put in it, and who are the interested groups. At the end of the day, just like any other project, you need people who are passionate and who want to drive this, right? So what organization in your community or in your circle is the one that makes sense for that?
No, that was a very good answer. And actually, what you're saying about all those great counselors we have in Alberta just reminded me of something. So we did a farm energy workshop in Lacombe last weekend, and then some guy got up and said that I think it was Brazeau County. They want to match whatever rebate that Energy Efficiency Alberta is providing for renewable energy. I didn't get any more details from him, but I don't know, the funding that was coming just to that particular county just sounded nuts. It was almost like you'd be sort of dumb not to put up your own project with the amount of money that was coming your way, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think people are starting to realize it, and some municipalities are stepping up to see how to make it easier. Definitely.
No, it's really awesome to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, now one thing with quite a few of the farmers or producers that I know, one of their main concerns is the well-being of the land. Now, this might require some out-of-the-box thinking on this one, or thinking about indirect impacts, but how does me having some sort of community energy project on my land or participating on this, how does this impact the land?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. To me, well, I think we can look at it at two levels. So one is, obviously we need electricity. So we need to have facilities that generate electricity. And if you had a choice between a new coal plant and a gas plant versus a renewable facility, the renewable facility will have less impact on your land. It has less air pollution. It has almost nothing that's going to leach into your land or contaminate your groundwater. Right? So just on those principle basis, renewables are better for your land. The other comes back to that element of control I mentioned. So with these community energy projects, because you need to have that community benefit agreement, you need that buy-in for the community for this project, you have more say in how that project is developed on your land. So the government of Alberta already has a lot of criteria on how to prevent, any negative impacts on wetlands and sensitive habitats. But because now you're participating with much more control into this program, you can layer on more demands beyond that, right? And you can help in how the project is designed, where it's located, so that it has the least amount of impact on your land.
Okay, cool. Okay. And I was also thinking too, just some of the, I don't know if you want to call them indirect or direct impacts, is just the impacts on climate change. So obviously with less greenhouse gas emissions that are going up into the atmosphere, then we're pushing climate change less severely or hard. So that, climate change is threatening biodiversity, and biodiversity is huge for producers because it's really critical for things like pollination. So just how we make food, we need that biodiversity. We need it to grow. We need it to thrive. And just things like extreme weather events too, that, we just got out of a drought. And I think by producing less greenhouse gas emissions, then there's less events like floods, like droughts that the land has to figure out a way how to deal with. So I think that, I don't know if you want to call it direct or indirect impact, but I think in a way you could say it's connected to a program or a project like this.
Yeah, that's really good sort of system-wide thinking there, Derek. Yeah, I definitely think so. And that's probably the more important answer is, the long-term impact of bringing more renewables on. Alberta's electricity grid right now is one of the dirtiest grids in North America. And we can't blame it. Coal and gas served us really well until now, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, and that has a huge GHG impact. The electricity sector, GHG emissions in Alberta are comparable to the oil sands extraction emissions.
Oh, wow.
So it's not insignificant. It's a pretty big deal, and you can actually make a big dent in Alberta's GHG portfolio by bringing on more renewables. So yeah, you're definitely becoming part of that larger solution.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you've got me sold on community energy right now. You've done a very good job. It only took 20 minutes. And I'm just curious before I get, or actually let's say once I get my friends together who have land and resources for this, because I definitely don't, what are our first steps to create our own community energy project? Maybe you can go take us through steps 1, 2, and 3.
Great question. So one of the first things you probably want to do is, get your folks together to create a common vision. Why are you engaged in this? What are the kind of benefits you want to see? What is driving it? And you want some clarity on that. But then pretty soon you want to get together with a consultant or even a developer who can do a feasibility study for you and give you some concrete options on the type of projects you can undertake, what are their returns, and then you need to go back and figure out, okay, does this match the kind of risks we want to take? Does this give the benefits we want to get from this project? So you need to clarify those things first before you take too many more steps down the line. So yeah, first, I'd say get together with your friends again over beers or coffee and figure out what your common goal is. And then, get a professional who can give you sound advice on the options available to you. And then you start designing the project. And one of the things so the professional especially can give you options on the technical details. They might also be able to give you options on the community benefits that you want to design around this and what are the agreements you want to have between different stakeholders. Do you want to own the panels? Do you want to enter into a power purchase agreement? How do you want to set that up? So they all give you some options. Then you want to figure out that engagement piece. What is the role? How are you engaging the community? Are they buying electricity or are they buying pieces of the panel? How are they being engaged? Yeah. All easy things.
Yeah. I can get on that right away. Also with resources, I was thinking I don't know if you know, but there was a time I was attempting to be a journalist and I cranked out a few articles, but nothing too sustainable financially. But anytime I was stuck on an energy issue, I'd always go to your guys' website, actually. You guys have a lot of great resources for that. But now I'm thinking for people who want to do a community energy project. Do you guys have anything that just average Joes and Janes in Alberta can use to help them with a community energy project?
Well, thanks for the shout out, Derek. And this is actually... we have a perfect resource for this. We have a community energy solar guide. And the question...
Totally set you up for that.
Right? This was designed for sure. No, but you were asking me about the first 3 steps. There is about, I think, over 15 steps we've outlined there. And that's where I would go, to get some details on how can you get started and some just basic knowledge and questions that people might have as they're getting started.
Okay, cool. So you just go to the website and just...
Yeah, just Google it. Right. Yeah, so it's called Community Solar Guide. And if you Google it for pembina.org, you should be able to find it.
All right, thank you. And last question, and I'm not trying to get you fired by asking this question, but do you think renewable energy is a good fit for rural Alberta?
That's an easy answer.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was controversial.
Yeah. Actually, I would love to hear if people have comments on this from your program. I think it's a really good fit. I think it goes back to what I was saying about some of the assets of farmers and the assets of the province. Like, we have amazing wind and solar resources compared to the rest of Canada. Like, Saskatchewan has some good ones too. So between the 2 provinces, we are far ahead of most of the other provinces in Canada. So we have great assets and we have amazing resourceful farmers who are used to doing these kind of collaborative projects, working on the land, taking care of the land, and have, just jerry-rigging stuff on the farm. So like just being able to create something out of nothing. So I think we have great human assets as well as the resources in rural Alberta. So I think it's a really good fit.
Is there also something to be said, just because, like, obviously it's a huge province and we're spread out all over the place, and just having, like, decentralized energy like that, I think there's got to be something there.
Yeah, and, the example I was saying about Starland County, that was one of the reasons they went with decentralized energy was they couldn't afford to build the infrastructure to bring the electricity from the grid to their irrigation pumps. So it was actually easier for them to build a local facility. So definitely, I think there is opportunities there. We have obviously been building our grid for over 100 years, so it has grown quite a bit. But there are still many places, I mean, especially if you look at rural Indigenous communities too that are remote. Think about everything north of Fort McMurray. Those are all huge opportunities for renewables and having a decentralized system. Definitely.
Oh, totally agree. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for your insights and information today. Are you ready to bring this home for us?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a try.
I believe.
All right, so I want to thank the Alberta Real Estate Foundation for providing financial support for this podcast. Today's episode was recorded at the Media Lab YYC in Calgary. Rural Routes to Climate Solutions is a central Alberta-based project empowering rural Albertans with climate solutions. Along with producing this podcast, Rural Routes runs workshops and farm field days. The next workshop will be about how to create your very own farmers cooperative. Oh, that ties into what we were talking about. And it will take place in Stettler. The date of the workshop has not been set yet, but it will most likely take place in February of next year. For more details, go to the website at www.rr2CS.ca. You can also make a comment about this episode if you go to the website. Derek would also like to thank the amazing advisory committee of Rural Routes to Climate Solutions for all its support this past year. The advisory is made up of Brenda Barrett, Dana Penrice, Mark Fox, and Kim Cornish. Happy farming wherever you are in Alberta, and remember that what's good for the farm is usually good for the climate.